Afternoon, Ray.
G'day, Nico. Good to be here again.
Where do we find ourselves today?
Oh, my God. How good is this place? If walls could talk, Nico.
I know. Have a look at it. We are in the Grand Hotel's Boardroom, and this place just reeks of history.
Well, and I can only imagine the deals that have been done in here and the conversations that have been had.
Which leads us into the conversation we're having today with Don Carrazza.
What an amazing story this one's going to be. Certainly a huge advocate for Mildura, from rags to riches and working as the porter to owning the Grand. How does that even happen?
Well, we're about to find out.
Welcome, Don. Good to have you here with us. Let's kick off by starting about your early life and how you ended up in Australia and when that was, and tell us a bit about that.
Well, it's a long time ago, Ray. We arrived here on December 1955, and we come because my father had already been in Australia for the previous 5 years. And, of course, he wanted a family to join him, and that's what we did. So I left Italy at the age of 15. And after 33 days by boat from Naples to Melbourne, which was quite an experience because you only see water and sky for 33 years.
33 days?
33 days. It makes you a hell of a difference to what you used to in the little villages that I came from. So that was a great experience to start off with. And when we arrived here, of course, Australia is a completely different culture, different structure to the Italian community, and so it was quite an experience.
You came to Australia when you were 15.
Yes.
Tell us about what it was like. 55, that was right before the floods too, yeah?
Yes, well, it was Mildura at the time only had 5,600 people.
Wow.
That's all it was. Of course, it was a small town. Where Coles is now, used to still be vineyards when I came here.
Your dad had been here for 5 years. Was he living in Mildura then?
He was living in Mildura. He came to Mildura because back in the early days, when he came back from the war, he had an uncle who had a property in Mildura, and his uncle was in Mildura because he arrived in Australia in 1927, and during the Depression of the 30s, he came up here fruit picking, and then he stayed on. And when my father asked him to be sponsored, his uncle sponsored him, and he came straight to Mildura, and he stayed here from then on.
Whereabouts did you live when you came to Mildura?
We lived just over the bridge on the New South Wales side of Mildura. We still owned the property there and got great memories about the place, and some disappointment too at the time because of the 1956 flood, something that we never expected it was going to be as high as it was, and we were away from the house for 7 months. So we lost everything.
For those of you that know Mildura, the house was actually, so if you're looking across from Dockside Cafe,
it's right opposite.
It's right opposite. So so how did that go in the 56 flood, obviously?
Well, it was underwater for 7 months. We left the house on the 7th of July 1956. We didn't get back till February the 7th, 1957.
When did you start working, Don?
Well, my parents, when I arrived from Italy, I was a reasonably good student in Italy, and of course, any parents' wish is to have you continue schooling, and especially Europeans, they always want their son or their daughters to be a doctor or a lawyer, and of course, my parents wanted me to continue to go to school. But during the period of the floods in 1956, where we lost everything, I felt that I was obliged to do something about and earn myself some living and help the family. So on the way back from school one day, I come past the Grand Hotel and asked for a job. And they employed me as a bellboy, and that's where I started my job in 1956. For 3 years, I was a bellboy at the Grand.
Wow. And so obviously you start working there. What sparked you to want to go further? Like, tell us a bit about working there and what that was like.
As a younger person, living in your own country, living your own friends, biggest ambition was to make enough money to go back home. That was always a dream of a lot of migrants, that they come to this country, and that was one of my dreams, to be successful and go back. But as you lived into the country more and more, you become in love with the country and you forget about your own country, and this has become my home. And so from then on, sort of I decided that I'd do what I love to do, but at the same time I try to bring Italian culture into our city, and this is. And I bought the first espresso coffee machine in 1959, which was only 4 other coffee machines in the whole city of Melbourne.
Oh, right.
So that gives you an indication how far we've gone with coffee since then.
So you'd suggest you're probably a pioneer in the coffee industry?
Well, I was, not only in Mildura, but I think because of the region side of it, I think it might have played to a lot of other region areas. Mm.
So you're working at the Grand. What was that like?
Well, it was exciting. It was the Grand has always been known as the Windsor of country Victoria, and it was a privilege to be working in such a great place.
Can you share with us how much you used to earn per week back then?
Oh, about £3.30 a week. But I used to make more in tips. £3 was very poor wages, but although tips were not known to Australia, only Europe had tips for centuries. I used to get tips because I did my job with passion and gave the service, and used to take the people up to the room and put the suitcase on the table and sort them all out, and they would give you a little 10 cents or 20 cents back in those days. At the end of the week, I used to get more in tips than I used to get in wages.
How do you go from bellboy to then starting first business?
Well, I was very fortunate that because of my service I used to provide at the Grand, I used to have my section of area where I used to serve my own regular customers every night, because, as you know, pubs at the time used to close at 6 p.m. By 6:30, everybody had to be out of the pub. And I was fortunate enough to have some very good clients within my section, and I had a bank manager, and they used to come in every night, and sometime were 5 to 6 before they used to run like a mob of sheep to water, and they used to come down for a drink, and then I would have my bank manager's 3 scotch on the table ready for him with a little jug of ice water. So I was giving that sort of privileged service to this individual, which he admired me for what I was doing, and he sort of took me under his wing a bit. And he was the first one that lent me some money for me to buy my first coffee shop, which was known as the Mary Elizabeth. And in fact, I was so proud of that coffee shop that I called my daughter Mary Elizabeth.
When you started that coffee shop, talk to us about what that was like. How did that go?
It's just across the road, 37 Lentry Avenue. It's right just 2 doors down from the office. And that started in 1959, and I was only 19 years old at the time. One of the things that I saw in the city, people used to go out a lot more. They would go to the cinema most Fridays and Saturday, and you had two theatres, like where the Brewers now used to be the Astor Theatre, and then we used to have the Ozone down the middle of the mall. And in between the two cinemas, they would sit about 2,000 people.
Wow.
Well, the Astor used to sit 1,300 people. So at night, after 11 o'clock, they're wandering the streets, but there was nothing because everything shut at 9 o'clock. And I saw the vision to see something happening after 11 o'clock. So I start open till 1 o'clock in the morning, serving coffees, because they used to line up like they go to the disco now. That's how they used to line up in my coffee shop.
Far out, really, for a coffee?
For a coffee. Well, coffee, we used to have a supper. We used to raisin toast, Welsh rabbit, spaghetti bolognese. All of a sudden we introduced a new culture of Italian standard in a place like Mildura, and that made an enormous difference.
Let's touch on the Italian part, because I'm sure back then, being a different culture probably wasn't as easy. I feel like we've embraced Italians now, and
was very difficult. I mean, in the early days, you were known as a Dago.
Yeah, Dago, yeah.
Dago.
Yeah.
But one of the fortunate things with me has always been the fact that I always mixed with the Aussie people.
Yeah.
Been in the Grand for 3 years, 99% were all Australians, so I mixed with them and gone into business and cater for the Australians. So I become part of the team. So it was not too difficult for me.
So not only did you bring coffee culture to Mildura and probably started in Australia, but probably led the way in terms of bringing down the divide in racism back then as well, I suppose.
Yes, I think people start to appreciate the Italian culture. They start to appreciate the Italian people, that they were a contributor rather than an.
Yeah, because we've come a long way in that respect, because my kids wouldn't even know what a Dago is.
No.
So
No, that's right.
It's completely...
Well, we now are a mixed population.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we don't disregard the Chinese or the Indians.
From the coffee shop to your next business, what was that?
Dominic's.
Aha.
Dominic's was really something special. I built Dominic's and we opened Dominic's in 1972. I want to go back a little bit to the early days when I had the coffee shop. Then I got married to Anna in 1966 and I started the first gelati and pizza place in Mildura back in 66, which gelati was unheard of it and pizzas was unheard of.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 1966, but I did that. In 8th Street, I had this beautiful little shop
What was that one called?
called the Gelati Bar.
Gelati Bar.
Gelati Bar, yeah, that was in 8th Street, where SIP is now. At the time, eating on a footpath or drinking on a footpath was unheard of it. But I had that vision. They do it in Rome, they do it in everywhere in Europe. Why shouldn't we do it in Mildura? So I remember when I had the first gelati that I want to introduce, I invited the local mayor and a couple of councillors, and I set up a little table outside on the footpath, and the mayor wouldn't sit there. Eric was embarrassing for him to sit on the footpath. But I said, well, you know, we're living in the Mediterranean area. We should introduce Mediterranean atmosphere on the footpath.
Wow.
Well, you can't walk anywhere in Mildura now without seeing outside dining.
That's right.
People on the
But
footpath.
back in those days, as I
unheard
said,
of.
I remember the then mayor was Ken Wright,
Yeah.
and he wouldn't sit on the footpath because he was embarrassed.
Fascinating, isn't it? Because fast forward through to the COVID time and everyone had to eat outside. So you had the pizza and gelati.
Gelati. And then in 1972, I closed the gelati and I closed the Mary Elizabeth, and I combined everything in Dom's. So Dom's had a combination of a bistro, takeaway pizza, function room upstairs, dinner dance at the back of the Dom's. So it was quite a complex. People that don't realise, we used to run a dinner dance 6 nights a week, and the people that played there for 3 years, Billy Tyson, Peter McWilliams and Johnny Booth.
Oh, right.
They used to call themselves the Jade, and they played there for 3 years, every night for 6 nights a week. People, they don't realise that we only had a population of 6,000 by then, I suppose.
Wow.
So you would have almost had nearly the whole town through.
Everybody,
night of the week.
everybody would come, and because they didn't have any entertainment home. There was no television, there was nothing. So that for them was a night out, and they enjoyed it. I mean, I feel, I don't know what's happened to this world. 9 o'clock now, all the restaurants are shut. You go after 9 o'clock, you can't get a meal. They're all gone.
Yeah.
Which to me, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, we were still flying.
So then television happens. Does that make any difference to...
Well, I think television took a lot of the... But, we still went right through the 70s and the 80s and 90s. People dining out at all hours. There was never any change to the... Since COVID, I don't know what's happened to this world. 9 o'clock, everybody goes out.
It's changed, hasn't it?
Very much so. Very much so.
I remember you worked with a television company to get people to Mildura. Is that right? Tell us about
Well,
that.
what I did this is back in 1961, the Club Da Vinci was built. And I asked the committee if I could lease the room for 12 months. So I took the lease of the property.
Nothing like a little vacuum cleaner interruption to lighten the mood.
Look out, Don's onto it. You can stop that vacuum now, can you, Don?
I was hoping to introduce TV star to the city of Mildura. I had a meeting with the general manager of Channel 9 in Richmond. For a 21-year-old, it was a bit scary. And I said to him, look, I said, I've got a list of guests that I want to bring to Mildura once a month. Would you agree to it? He looked at me and he sort of said, well, where'd this young fella come from? He said, who's going to be the guarantor? I said, I am the guarantor. And he said, well, he said, do you have enough money? Because these are expensive actors. I said, well, look, I'll pay in advance before they come up. He saw my passion and he basically agreed. So he organised the contract and I booked 8 artists. So I come back and I was very excited about having, and the first person I had to Mildura was Dorothy Baker. She was a very good entertainer on Channel 9. You told the people in Mildura, because I was very busy in the cafe at the Mary Elizabeth and used to tell all the young people, so they used to tell their parents, because parents are the ones I wanted, because we didn't have food or drinks. It was purely entertainment, and so you need the older people to come and look at this entertainment. And it was a sellout. And that becomes so popular that I used to sell before the next one was ready to go. All the tickets were sold. But unfortunately, once again, a bit of jealousy amongst. They didn't want to renew my lease because they reckoned they were going to do it themselves. I was making too much money out of the deal. Next year, they didn't renew my lease, so I stopped. And the local community, they were so upset because the ladies, they would go to the hairdresser once a month, they put their best frock on. The guys used to wear dinner suits to these functions. This is how important it was something very special. It was really a gala night.
What year did you buy the Grand Hotel, Don?
Well, the Grand Hotel, now, I just want to go back then from Dominic's.
Yep.
I had nearly 25 years of straight hospitality without even having a holiday. So I decided that I had an offer for the purchase of Dominic's, and I sold Dominic's in 1978. But prior to that, I built Piccolo Italia around Piccolo Italia, which was a very good, great complex, which today is Stefano's Cafe.
Yeah.
And that was a very big complex and it was an amazing place. Then from then, I sold Dominic's in 1978, and I thought we were sort of losing oranges on the ground, and I was agriculturist at the time as well. I had citrus property, but we couldn't sell the oranges. They used to rot on the ground. And so I decided that with a group of friends, we're going to a juice industry. And I started with Murrayland Fruit Juices, which today is the largest juice plant in Australia, which once I started in 1978, one there. So I held that for about, I started that in 1979 and I sold it in 1989. It was very interesting because you had unit holders that were all part of the deal. They were all contributors with their produce, but I was fortunate enough that I had the raw material to work with. But before I did that, I did about 6 weeks to travel the world to learn what can you do with an orange, which is an amazing thing. What you can do with an orange is not just squeezing juice. There are so many byproducts in an orange that it's amazing. And that was all our cream that we created out of an orange.
From the co-op,
Well, then we sold that in 1989.
Yep.
And believe it or not, the month after, the Grand come up for auction. because I never dreamed you could buy the Grand, because the Grand was a public company. The Grand was, in 1985, another public company bought them, which was the In the West Group, and they went belly up.
Right.
And that's when the Grand come up for auction. And I was so fortunate. I mean, I always believe it's in destiny that here I am, sold the factory and settled in the 1st of November. And on the 14th of December, a month later, the Grand comes up for auction.
Talk about what it's been like, the journey with the Grand, and you talk about what you said before about the jealousy that you've had in your past to deal with. I'm sure tall poppy syndrome would kick in when you've got something like this.
Tall poppy syndrome that applies to, I suppose, everywhere, but Mildura in particular is a very small town, and you had to sort of suffer those rumours because it was quite easy to hear those rumours around a small community, so it was very difficult.
How have you coped with that?
Oh, look, when you're honest what you do in life and when you work with honesty, and you don't have a concern.
Yeah.
You can work with your faith, with your head up all the time, but if you're a crook, well, then you've got a problem.
It's interesting because when I think of you, Don, I think of someone that gets things done and does things that not many people can do.
Well, I'm very fortunate and very lucky that I've got that drive. If I take on something, I don't let go. I'm like one of those little ferret dogs. Just won't let go. And that's me. Once I get on to a particular project, I don't want to fail. So I put all my effort and life into it until a project becomes a success.
There's a couple of things I want to work on here. So let's talk about, as a project, as an example, being able to close a laneway is something not many people can do. How did you influence that?
Once again, it was, a lot of people think it was a lot of advantage to me. It was in a way, but it was an incredible advantage also to the city because they used to use those laneway purely to go after the nightclub and either do all the bad things around the corner, and was not very pleasant when you got up the next morning on a Saturday morning and a Sunday morning, going to the laneway and saw what you saw was not very pleasant. So to me, that was part of cleaning the city up.
Yeah.
And then we've done it, and it's been a terrific success from that point of view. But it cost me a lot of money to buy it. I mean, I didn't get it for nothing.
Talk to us about some of the ideas that you would have loved to have got off the ground that haven't happened, like the casino.
Well, look, the casino, a lot of people that were so lucky in Mildura to have a project like that, but unfortunately today was just the minority of people that were against it, and was purely the jealousy, and the political side of it was the wrong side. For the casino, not because of the they didn't want it, but it was because of the jealousy and because of the fact they had local influence that made it not happen. And from my point of view, that was a great disappointment because we went and raised $400 million for the casino.
Wow.
It was a lot of money.
That's crazy.
A lot of money. And we had the backing of the lenders that they believed in what I was doing, they believed in the future of Mildura, and they allowed us to, because you had to go to the government with money up front, otherwise you couldn't say, I want a casino, how are you going to pay for it? So that, people that don't realise how much money has cost me to sort of try to get off the ground, and then not happening, when we had a letter already in writing from John Brumby, who was then the Premier of Victoria, to agree to it. And of course, I've been supporting the National Party and the Liberal Party for years. I thought, well, I'm home and host.
That could have been a complete game changer for Mildura.
Mildura today would have been a different city. The airport would double the size it is today.
Yeah.
So the city would have been a completely different city altogether.
So I've heard other things, and you can say yes or no on whether these are true. Did you put forward an idea, or you wanted to put forward an idea of putting vines along Langtree as a cover?
I always said that Mildura, the easiest thing to grow is vines. First of all, let me specify, the mall, I never approved a mall in between 9 and 8th Street. I always approved the mall from 8 to the river.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's where the mall should be. And you could have had a mall that operated 24/7, where the existing mall operates 5 hours a day, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
By 11 o'clock in the morning, there's hardly a soul in there. Then by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's hardly a soul there after that. So it's completely the wrong place. And I never wanted a mall there. And I had lots of fight with the then editor of the Sunrising Daily, George Tilley, about that mall should not have been there. But then when it was built, I said, well, it was such a great open area. I said, if you don't put any shade here, you're not gonna. So we should create a similar pergola that I created at the Grand, all the way. Would make it a completely different atmosphere, different. The beauty about the vines is that in the winter they all blow away, and you've got the sun going through. And,
incredible.
And it'll be a great vision, But look at now, they're all accepting the fact that the pergolas are worth building them. If you look around Mildura at the moment, there's a number of pergolas. Not the Grand started, then we went across the other side, and then I did 27 Deacon. Now from 27 Deacon, the next thing, they did one across the road there. Now there's one, the coffee places in 10th Street, they got a pergola.
Yep.
There's a pergola in the 400 Guardian.
400 Guardian.
Yep. People have started to realise that pergolas are attractive, but also they do the purpose. They keeping the place cool.
As a child, Don, I remember Siesta Fiesta. Were you behind that?
Well, I started that. And we really, I did a lot of work, but unfortunately we were let down by the big boys, like the Coles and the Banks. They didn't want to close for an hour for the lunch. They had to be open because of air conditioning, because of this, because of that. But that disappointed me a lot, because I think it would have been a novelty, but the media that you would receive, and we still made world media. Our name went to London, and the London said, when we used to do the promotion of the tourism in Mildura, Sam Stitzer used to have the sombrero hat on it.
Yep.
And
I remember that.
What do you call that?
The hammock.
The hammock.
Yep.
And he was laying in the hammock in his trailer every show that we went to. And that was, once again, although it didn't happen, but the publicity we got out of it.
Any other ideas that I haven't mentioned that you wish had have happened for Mildura?
My biggest disappointment has been Mildura has been the setup of the mall, and I've always said that if we had created a mall in between 8 and the river, we would be buzzing with people, and would have been an atmosphere that no other region town would have, similar to Mildura. That was my biggest disappointment. But there's a lot, I've been involved in sporting facility. I mean, I've been involved in the Warrnambool Football Club for 50 odd years. I'm the number one ticket holder of Warrnambool Football Club. I've been a president, I've been in the committee for donkey's years. But it's been a successful club, and I'm very proud of that as well.
This is a part that I think we probably don't talk enough about with you, Don, is Don the philanthropist. I knew I was going to stuff that up. Don the philanthropist, you can say it.
The philanthropist.
As a philanthropist, I always believe in culture. I believe in education, and I believe in arts, and I believe in music. To me, they are the three elements that bring different standard of community to your region. Education is a very important part. That's why my wife Anne and I, we donated the 29 Deacon at the La Trobe University. I donated that building to the university because we wanted to keep you in a city, Mildura. That's a very important part, the culture of education. If you've got educated community, you've got a very wealthy and rich city. But one of the other things that has been one of my greatest passions is really to support the Indigenous community. But people who don't realise, we employed over 4,500 Indigenous in this community. Mildura is the cleanest city in Australia. You have great community of Indigenous people, and the reason being is that they've all been employed and they've all got a job and they all went to work. So I'm proud of that. That is one of my greatest achievements that I can say that I've done, and I'm still doing it. I've still got an office in Lentry Avenue that it's run by me, but it belongs to the federal government.
So your passion for Mildura is absolutely incredible, and I was fascinated to hear before that you actually initially intended to go back to Italy, but then when you...
But this is the dream of every migrant.
Yeah.
I mean, you realise as a 15-year-old, you got schoolmates, you got relatives, you got family, you got your grandparents. You just don't live and sort of say, I'm never going to come back. I've been one of the most fortunate people. I've been back to Italy about 19 times because I still love my country. I still love my family. I still got a lot of rallies there, and I go there regularly as much as I can because it's part of me. So when you arrive in a new country, the only thing you want to do, you came here for better yourself financially and hope that you make enough money to go back soon and join your friends and your family and where you come from. But then, of course, as I stayed on, I become more and more in love with this country because the opportunities were here and there was a lot to be done, and I was part of that.
What is it about Mildura that you love?
I find Mildura so important because, first of all, I love the climate of Mildura. I love the security of the climate. I mean, we don't have earthquakes here, we don't have hurricane, we don't have big storms. It's a very safe area as far as we're concerned. Let's
talk a bit about family now. You've got a beautiful family.
I have a beautiful family, and I'm very happy that after 57 years, I even found a member of my family that I had when I was very, very young, but I didn't have the opportunity to keep him or to be with him for the rest of his life. But fortunate enough, he was adopted by my partner at the time, but we were just young, 21 years old, we were very young, and we didn't know what we were doing, but I was in opposition at the time for me to marry or also to go to my parents and say, look, I've just met an Aussie girl, I've got her pregnant, I've got to marry her. That would have been an absolutely shock to the family. Lucky and fortunate enough, after 57 years, he came and found me, and I'm so proud of it because I was proud of also the fact that I shared with my wife Anna before anybody else, her and I, we were the only two that knew about him all these years. So Anna knew from 6 months after we were married that I had this young son out in the country somewhere, and I used to always say to Anna, if one day a little boy comes and knocks on our door, don't be surprised because I've got one out there. So she was aware of it, and I'm so proud of her that just before she died, she revealed this to her daughter, which was an amazing thing. And then about 3 weeks later, I get a letter in the mail saying, look, I'm so-and-so, and I think I'm your son. And so we're now very happy that he also joined the Carrazza family, and we're very proud to be part of it.
That's awesome. That is.
Tell me about the emotional feeling of all that, because you're losing your wife and then you're finding your son. It's an incredible...
That was a very, very, very excited for me. I was amazing when I got that letter. I just got on the phone very quickly, and I knew he was my son, and I knew that I had some sort of responsibilities about it, and I certainly made the effort to get to know each other very quickly, and so the whole family now is part of our family, and we're very proud of that.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about Anna? Look, she's an amazing woman, and you had
Anna-
an amazing relationship, Don, because you were married a long time.
We got to know each other very young. Well, not very young. I was 26 when I married Anna, and she was 21. So we weren't old. But she was an amazing hostess. She really made you look good when you had guests at home, because she went out of her way with the presentation of the table setting, the flowers, and the way she dressed, always immaculately.
Elegant.
So elegant. So I was very proud of her. And we got on really well. And as I said, we travelled the world together, and we enjoyed life. We met so many wonderful people. And anyway, she was diagnosed, and they gave her 4 months, but she lasted 11 years. So
Wow.
it was an amazing success. But at the end, she said, I've had enough. But I was with her all the time. So she would never go to a doctor or a blood test without me being there. So every move she made during the course of her sickness, I had to be always with her. So I was very proud.
That's lovely. With 70 years in hospitality, do you see yourself slowing down?
Look, I will always. One of the most important thing that happened to my life was disappointing that I lost my wife, and I'm happy that she's gone because I didn't want her to suffer anymore. But God sent me back to my roots, to the Grand. So I live in the Grand now. I feel as proud as I can be by living here, and I will never let go hospitality, because every time I walk around the Grand, I can see what's going on and what needs to be done.
Yep.
And that to me is part of hospitality, and you can tell the people are working and the people around you, they all respect me because I tell them for their own benefits. They're good benefits, not for tell them off for not doing the job.
Speaking of that, how old are you now, Don?
84 coming up.
84. And did I hear a rumour you might have purchased a brewery back?
Yes, yes, I couldn't afford not to.
How long ago was that?
Only in the last 6 months. And it's open and it's going strong again. And we're doing wonderful things with the brewery at the moment. We've leased the bar side of it and the food side of it, but I kept the manufacturing side, which I've created a new company. Once again, I've got a vision to have a local product, and the new company is called the Mallee Brewing Company, which I'm hoping that everybody that comes to Mildura will have some special Mallee Brewing beer. And so we're working on that at the moment, and hopefully in the next 3 months we'll have that up and running as well.
Wow.
Nice.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
It's good to see the brewery back operating again.
Well, it is. Look, it's one of the nicest buildings. I did it more for the building than the actual brewery itself.
Oh, the decor in there is amazing.
The building is extraordinary. It's one of the best Art Deco buildings that Mildura's got. And to destroy it would have been a disgraceful. So I'm very fortunate I bought it back, and it's back in the Carrazza clan again, so I'm very happy about that.
So, Don, one of the things that fascinates me about you is wherever I go, whoever I talk to, they could be anywhere in the country. When I say that I'm from Mildura, they go, "Oh, the Don." And one of them was Robert Di Domenico, to name a name. But you must know some incredible people. I'd love to see your little black book of people you know. But talk about some of the people you've met in your time. I've
met many, many people, from governors to prime ministers to ministers to important personalities of all kind. I've been one of those sort of people that I've always made myself available to help people. I'm always that sort of person. And you'd be amazing, even now that I don't run the hotel, how many people ring me and book room through me, or book Stefano through me, or book the Pizza Cafe, because I never say no. Like, you want to book it for a room, say, give me your name and I'll book the room for them. It's not a problem to me. And that's why I believe that you get to know people, because you're willing to communicate with people. And I've been a great communicator. And then I was very lucky to have one of those famous horses that really put us on the map. I was part of one of the greatest horse that Australia's ever produced. Popular Arm was a pacer, which made us recognised in the trotting world all over the world, because it was one of the greatest. They used to call it the Farlap of trotting. That's how good it was. So it's in the Hall of Fame now. It's the horse has been put in. I went and got the cup about 3 years ago, just before COVID.
You've had an incredible journey. What would you say you'd like to see as your legacy?
Oh, look, I'm very fortunate that I have some beautiful grandchildren. And my grandchildren, they know my dream and they know my wishes. And it's beautiful for them to, only just recently, my granddaughter rings me from Amsterdam. And she said, Nonna, she said, will you be available at 5 o'clock tomorrow night? We want to give you a call. We want to do a link-up call in between Domenico, Massimo in Adelaide, and me in Amsterdam. So I said, well, I'd be very happy to talk to you. So they rang me, and you know what they rang me for? They just wanted to know, Nonna, when you're going, what legacy you want to be reminded. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So as I said, my grandchildren will be my legacy.
I know your grandchildren. You've got some pretty amazing grandchildren, too.
Yeah, they are very special.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Nico, but my hair's been standing on end pretty much the whole way through this podcast.
Yeah, and I'm going to need a tissue.
Yeah. Don, thank you so much for being so open with us today. Thanks again for giving us your time today.
Pleasure, and thank you.
This episode of I Should Have Stayed in Bed podcast is brought to you by Technodo IT.
They are your experts in IT. They have no locking contracts and they give you one price that fits all.
Not to be confused with Sharknado 7.